Forbury Chapel, which occupies a site inside the original priory walls, has an intriguing history dating back to the 13th century. At this time, Leominster was an important town, occupying a strategic position in the Welsh Marches and generating significant money from wool, textiles and leather products. The medieval priory was established in 1121 by Henry I as a Benedictine monastery and economic engine for Reading Abbey, producing wealth from its diverse commercial and agricultural activities. It also became a centre of pilgrimage with many relics. The Benedictine order originated in 526, when Benedict identified key things a Christian should do if he truly seeks God. He wrote the rule, guidelines on how to live as monks. The order spread across Europe, reaching England in 596. The rule dictated that admission to a monastery should be challenging, but by the 13th century this had softened and individual abbots were free to adopt their own house rules in many day-to-day matters. These were written down as a code of practice in a book called a customary. This freedom could create problems with the bishops. This proved to be so at Leominster. During Henry's reign, the townspeople were granted the right to worship in the western end of the Norman nave. This meant sharing a part of the church with the monks. Despite the monks having use of the lion's share of the site, and Leominster having the largest church in Herefordshire after Hereford Cathedral, this provoked ill feeling towards the townspeople. This tension rumbled on until it came to a head in King Edward I's reign in the 13th century. Following the building of a new nave for the use of parishioners that replaced the south aisle, conflict ensued and the townspeople were locked out of their church.
You disturb the peace with your protest. Be away or incur the wrath of God.
You have no right to keep us from our devotions.
You monks think you're all high and mighty. Well, you're no better than us.
On the 11th of January, 1276, Thomas de Cantilupe, Bishop of Hereford, a man of high morals and charity, visited Leominster Priory to resolve the conflict. Thomas had twice been Chancellor of Oxford University and Chancellor of England and was a good friend of King Edward. He arrived with his formal retinue and was received by the prior, Stephen de Wotton.
Be upstanding for His Grace, the Bishop of Hereford.
Your Grace, it's a pleasure to receive you.
You might not think so, Prior Wotton, when we're finished here. I have received disturbing reports of the behaviour of you and your monks.
Sister, welcome. I think I recognise you. Why don't you drop on Blossom? Let's see if I recognise you.
Not the first occurrence. You have much to answer for.
There are those that seek to defame us, Your Grace.
I will get to the bottom of this, but first assemble your monks, where I will instruct them on the error of their ways.
Bishop of Hereford had the monks assembled and preached the error of their ways.
I think you all know why I am here.
Yes, Your Grace.
Following intense scrutiny by himself and his officials, Thomas, Bishop of Hereford, proclaimed his disapproval of the monks' actions and strongly admonished their behaviour.
God expects high standards of you.
Yes, Your Grace.
Bishop of Hereford forbade the locking of the church doors to exclude the parishioners and ordered the proper use of the bells, calling the townspeople to prayer, which had been paid for by the townspeople. The bishop severely criticised corrupt practices, misappropriation of endowments, and the decline in providing alms to those in need. All of this was on top of the monks' moral laxity and fraternisation with the female sex. Bishop of Hereford demanded that these abuses were corrected immediately, and his demands were followed up with written instructions. However, the monks refused to make amends, claiming their allegiance was to the Abbot of Reading, not the Bishop of Hereford. The bishop's attentions were to be diverted, though, by his own problems, with the cantankerous and fiery Archbishop of Canterbury, John Peckham. Although Thomas, Bishop of Hereford, had been a law student of John Peckham's in Paris, the two had fallen out as Peckham rose to become Archbishop of Canterbury. Peckham threatened Thomas with excommunication in a dispute which had escalated, and Thomas was forced to leave for Rome to clear his name, where he unexpectedly died. During his visit to the Priory, the Archbishop agreed to finance the building of the Forbury Chapel inside the gatehouse to the monastery for use by the parishioners.
Open these doors in the name of His Grace, the Archbishop of Canterbury.
Get me Prior Wotton immediately.
Yes, Your Grace.
People of Leominster, I will brook no interference with your devotions to God, but I am sensitive to the demands of the Priory monks. I have decided to fund your own church at the entrance to the Priory, and I will dedicate it to our great martyr, St. Thomas a Becket.
Thank you, my lord. We are so grateful for your help.
The chapel was completed and opened in 1284, 2 years after the death of Thomas, Bishop of Hereford. Peckham dedicated the Forbury Chapel to the martyr, St. Thomas a Becket. Ultimately, however, the townspeople were not impressed with their new house of worship, regarding it as mean and inadequate. It was nearly half a century before the townspeople returned to their devotions in the Priory Church. The criticisms of the Priory and the monks' behaviour had not been totally resolved, and the succeeding Bishop of Hereford, Richard Swinfield, was to have an ongoing battle with the monks over their behaviour.